You walk a trail in the Appalachians on a summer afternoon, and the biggest danger you register is a bear. The mountains feel managed, trail markers, other hikers, a parking lot behind you. But 15 species living in those same ridges, hollows, and creek valleys qualify for a list most people never expect to see attached to these mountains. Some use the trailside brush. Some nest in the earth beneath your boot. One is smaller than a sesame seed and can transmit 4 separate diseases in a single feeding. The ranking you are about to see is not based on size, fame, or how badly something hurts. It is based on one question: how few things have to go wrong before the outcome becomes serious? Where are you watching from, and have you already met one of these? Starting at 15, where the danger is real but almost entirely misunderstood, is the eastern cicada killer. This wasp is enormous by any American standard, up to 2 inches long, with yellow and black banding and a body thick enough to feel like a small toy plane when it passes close to your face. That combination, size, color, sound, triggers a reaction in most people that is completely proportional to the wrong danger. People flinch, step back, sometimes run. The problem is that cicada killers are solitary wasps. The females can sting, but they have no colony to defend, no alarm chemical recruiting backup, and no territorial imperative that includes humans. They are digging a burrow to provision with paralyzed cicadas for larvae they will never see hatch. Research on cicada killer behavior consistently shows that females focused on hunting or burrowing are extraordinarily difficult to provoke. Males, which are more likely to hover near humans, lack a stinger entirely. The micro twist is this: the wasp that looks most like it will hospitalize you is one of the least likely to. Every summer, people in Appalachian foothills spray, kill, or abandon outdoor spaces because of cicada killers, while the species that actually require attention go unnoticed around them. Cicada killers sit at the bottom of this list, not because they are completely harmless, but because the encounter almost never reaches the threshold the title requires. They exist here as calibration. Size tells you almost nothing. At 14, a different calibration problem. The Wheelbug looks like it wandered out of a science fiction film, a large predatory insect wearing what appears to be a gear wheel on its back, moving with slow, deliberate patience across a garden leaf or fence post. Most people who encounter one for the first time either photograph it or step away, mildly fascinated. It reads as strange, not threatening. The Wheelbug is a true bug, a member of the order Hemiptera, and it hunts other insects by stabbing them with a needle-like beak and injecting a paralytic saliva. That same beak, used defensively on a human hand, delivers what entomologists and medical professionals consistently describe as one of the most painful defensive bites produced by any insect in North America, sharper and longer lasting than a bee sting, sometimes causing numbness or discomfort lasting hours. The pain is immediate and unambiguous. What makes it rank higher than the cicada killer is the interface. Wheelbugs are garden hunters. They sit on plants, wooden fence rails, tree bark. They do not warn before biting. The person who reaches into a shrub, picks up a piece of firewood, or handles garden debris without gloves is in the only real danger zone that exists here: direct, unintentional contact. They belong at 14 because their danger is conditional on that contact, but the contact itself is entirely ordinary. 13 belongs to a species most people associate with dirty apartments and urban neglect: the brown-banded cockroach. In the Appalachian region, that association removes it from consideration almost immediately. This is a rural and suburban insect. Clean homes get it, cabins get it. The insect hitchhikes in grocery bags, cardboard boxes, and secondhand appliances. The reason it belongs on this list is not a sting or a bite. Brown-banded cockroaches shed body parts, saliva, and fecal material that become airborne as they dry. In enclosed spaces, those particles are documented allergens. Studies tracking urban asthma cases have identified cockroach allergen as a primary indoor trigger, and the effect is not limited to cities. Homes in rural and mountain communities that unknowingly harbor colonies face the same progressive allergen accumulation. This is not the dramatic danger further up the list. It is chronic, invisible, and easy to attribute to unrelated causes. The insect never stings and rarely bites. It creates medical risk through its presence alone. 12 is where the countdown starts to change texture. The saddleback caterpillar is roughly an inch long, shaped like a lumpy leaf, and decorated in brown and green with a vivid saddle-shaped marking across its back. It does not move fast. It does not pursue anything. It lives on plant leaves at exactly the height of a reaching hand, a brushing shoulder, or a child's arm moving through dense summer foliage. The spines radiating from its body are hollow and venom-filled. This is not an allergic reaction mechanism. The venom itself causes direct tissue irritation, and contact with skin can cause pain that radiates well beyond the contact site, sometimes accompanied by nausea. In documented cases, contact has produced swelling and welting significant enough to require medical attention. The reaction is not always immediate. The micro-twist matters here. The caterpillar does not look dangerous in the way people have been trained to recognize danger from insects. It looks like part of the plant. The beautiful saddle marking may even attract a second look from a curious hiker or child. It ranks at 12 because the harm it causes is real, but requires direct physical contact. And avoiding it requires knowing it exists, which most people moving through Appalachian forest understory in summer do not. At 11, something that looks unambiguously dangerous, but whose medical profile is more complicated than its reputation suggests. The cow killer, technically a velvet ant, technically a wingless female wasp in the family Mutilidae, covers the ground of Appalachian meadows and forest edges on warm afternoons. She is covered in dense, vivid red and black hair and moves with a confident, purposeful pace that has no obvious evasive behavior. The common name cow killer is not scientific exaggeration. Researchers who study Mutilidae freely describe the sting as extraordinary. The sting pain is real and severe by any reasonable standard. But here is where the calibration matters. The venom of velvet ants is not, in terms of systemic medical danger, dramatically more hazardous than a yellow jacket sting for most people. The cow killer name describes the pain intensity, not a confirmed medical outcome. The ranking is not about what happens in the exceptional sensitivity case. It is about where this insect sits in the broader pattern. It belongs at 11 because it delivers one of the most viscerally memorable encounters in these mountains, while requiring direct contact with a species most people would never willingly approach. The danger is conditional and real. It is not the efficient proximity-independent exposure coming higher on this list. Deer flies hit 10. These small, biting flies with iridescent wings and a slashing mouth part are a standard nuisance complaint for anyone hiking creek corridors or wooded trails in the Appalachians from late spring through midsummer. People swat them, curse them, wear hats because of them. What they generally do not know is that deer flies in the eastern United States are a confirmed mechanical vector for tularemia, a bacterial infection caused by Francisella tularensis that can cause fever, ulcerating skin lesions, swollen lymph nodes, and in untreated cases, serious complications. Tularemia cases linked to deer fly bites are documented in the eastern states. The CDC tracks them. The mechanism is mechanical transmission. The fly's mouthparts pick up bacteria from one host and deposit them in the bite wound of another without any required development period inside the insect. The animal reservoir in Appalachian habitats includes rabbits and rodents. The insect does not need to be infected in the classical sense. It needs to have fed recently on an infected animal and then feed on a human. This is not a high probability event on any individual walk. Most deer fly bites remain nothing more than a swollen, itching welt, but the mechanism requires no unusual conditions other than the bite itself, which is virtually guaranteed on any prolonged creekside hike in Appalachian summer. That's what moves deer flies past entries requiring direct handling or nest disturbance. They find you. 9 marks the first entry where the phrase "you never knew lived there" feels genuinely sharp. The Puss caterpillar, Megalopyge opercularis, is widely recognized as the most venomous caterpillar in North America. Its venom delivery mechanism is identical in principle to the saddlebacks, but the scale of the reaction it can produce is meaningfully different. Documented cases have produced severe radiating pain from a limb into the trunk of the body, nausea, difficulty breathing, and in some instances hypotension requiring emergency intervention. The ER records of affected patients describe an almost diagnostic shock when they learn what caused it. The Puss caterpillar's defense is architectural. The venom-delivering spines are concealed beneath a coat of fine, soft-looking hairs. The caterpillar looks like a small piece of fur, or a feather, or something a child might describe as cute. Picking it up or brushing against it bare-skinned can deliver venom before the person understands what they have touched. The southern Appalachian Range is documented in university extension records and USDA accounts as part of this species' habitat. It is not confirmed throughout the northern range of the mountains, and claiming otherwise would overstate the evidence. But in the southern and middle portions, western North Carolina, parts of Virginia and Tennessee, this caterpillar lives on the same oak and elm leaves that form the trailside canopy. That geographic constraint is exactly why it sits at 9 rather than higher. The exposure zone is real, but not universal across the full mountain chain. If you are watching this and already thinking that the first 9 entries still required something unusual, direct contact, an unfortunate bite, a specific trail or region, here is where that changes. The remaining 6 species do not require you to disturb anything, reach into anything, or be especially unlucky. They require only proximity, and in the Appalachians, proximity is guaranteed. If you are not already subscribed, this is a reasonable moment. The next 6 are the reason this list exists. At 8, the forest centipede. Several species of the genus Scolopendra and their relatives are confirmed residents of Appalachian forest floors, rocky outcroppings, log interiors, and leaf litter. These are fast-moving, elongated, multi-legged animals capable of delivering a venomous bite through forcipules, modified legs functioning as venom claws, rather than a traditional mouthpart. The bite produces immediate, significant pain, and in some documented cases causes swelling, local tissue damage, and systemic symptoms including headache and nausea. The micro-twist. Most people who encounter centipedes in Appalachian buildings think of them as basement nuisances, harmless and exaggerated. The house centipede that flickers across a bathroom wall is not this animal. The large forest centipede living under the piece of firewood you just picked up, the flat stone you flipped on a trail, the decaying log at the edge of a campsite. That one is different in size, venom capacity, and willingness to bite when handled or trapped against skin. The gap between the familiar basement centipede and the species that genuinely requires respect is wider than most people in these mountains realize. At 7, the list reaches its first invasive entry, Fire ants, Solenopsis invicta, are not a Gulf Coast insect anymore. USDA APHIS surveillance and State Agriculture Department mapping in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia document established reproducing fire ant populations in the Piedmont and lower foothill elevations of the Appalachian chain. They are moving upslope. Elevation still limits them. High-altitude Appalachian habitat remains largely outside their confirmed range, but the lower and middle elevations are not protected. Fire ants do not simply sting. A single worker locates a threat and recruits the colony through alarm chemistry. Many ants grip the skin with their mandibles to anchor themselves before rotating their abdomens to deliver repeated stings in a circular pattern. A person who steps into or near a fire ant mound, which can be almost invisible in grass cover, may receive dozens of stings before they move away. Each sting deposits venom that causes a burning sensation, followed by a characteristic white pustule. For most people, the aftermath is painful and miserable. For individuals with venom hypersensitivity, the mass stinging event has a different trajectory. The ranking at 7 reflects the combination of colony mechanics and expanding territory. The people who grew up associating fire ants exclusively with southern states are now potentially walking past their nests on trails and picnic areas that did not host them a decade ago. At 6, the American dog tick. This is not the tick most people in Appalachian country are thinking of when they check themselves after a hike. It is larger than the deer tick, easier to see, and in many public conversations treated as the less dangerous option. The logic goes, if it's not the small one, I'm probably fine. The American dog tick, Dermacentor variabilis, is the primary vector in the eastern United States for Rocky Mountain spotted fever, a rickettsial bacterial infection that the CDC has described in disease burden reporting as among the most lethal tick-borne diseases in the country. RMSF progresses rapidly. Early symptoms like fever, headache, and rash can be mistaken for flu. Without prompt antibiotic treatment, the disease can progress to organ damage and death within days. The rash itself does not always appear early, and a significant proportion of confirmed cases lack a documented tick bite history. The micro twist is the misidentification problem. Hikers who check for ticks and remove the larger visible dog tick with confidence, relieved it wasn't the smaller deer tick they'd been warned about, may not seek evaluation for illness developing several days later. The tick they saw and removed may be exactly the one whose bite matters most for RMSF in this region. 5. The black widow spider. Several entries on this list will surprise people because the species is unfamiliar. This one may surprise people for the opposite reason. Most viewers know black widows exist somewhere. What is underappreciated in Appalachian communities specifically is how thoroughly Latrodectus mactans, the southern black widow, occupies the region's built and semi-built environments. Woodpiles, outbuildings, the underside of outdoor furniture, the corners of privies and pit toilets, shed floors, undisturbed garage corners, and spaces around log cabin foundations. Encounters happen most often during ordinary activities, moving firewood, reaching under a deck, cleaning out a storage shed. The venom is a neurotoxin, latrotoxin, that acts on nerve terminals and in significant envenomation can cause muscle cramping, abdominal rigidity, sweating, and elevated blood pressure, a cluster of symptoms sometimes called latrodectism. Antivenom exists. Most healthy adults recover without it, but children, elderly individuals, and people with cardiovascular conditions face a different risk profile, and the access to emergency care that urban environments assume is not always present in the rural Appalachian communities where this spider is most common. At 4, the bald-faced hornet. Understanding why this species ranks here requires understanding one thing about its nest that most people get wrong. The large gray paper nests that appear in late summer and fall, attached to branches or eaves, look obvious in retrospect. The problem is, they are built during summer when leaves are fully out, expanding from walnut-sized to basketball-sized without ever being visible through the foliage. The colony reaches its peak of 400 to 700 individuals in late summer, precisely when the nest is largest, the workers are most defensive, and leaf coverage has begun to thin enough for the first accidental discoveries. Bald-faced hornets are not unusually aggressive by nature, but their defensive perimeter is wide and their response is coordinated. Vibration from a lawnmower, a trimmer, or a hiking boot against a low branch can trigger the colony. They target moving objects and, specifically, eyes and face. They can sting multiple times. The person who discovers the nest is rarely close enough to retreat before stings occur. Cases involving severe allergic reactions to bald-faced hornet stings are documented in medical literature. For people who carry venom hypersensitivity and don't know it, a first serious envenomation may be the moment they find out. A September afternoon, a leaf blower, a nest that was invisible in July. That is the realistic scenario, and it requires no unusual circumstances at all. At 3, a danger that belongs in a different category entirely. Eastern equine encephalitis virus circulates in the wetland fringes, creek bottoms, and lowland forests of the Appalachian region. The CDC surveillance maps show confirmed human cases in states that include the Appalachian Corridor, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. The primary enzootic transmission cycle moves through birds and the mosquito Culiseta melanura. Bridge vectors, Aedes, and Coquiletidia species create the pathway to mammals, including humans. EEE has a human fatality rate that CDC reporting has placed at approximately 30% of cases. Survivors frequently face permanent neurological damage. There is no specific treatment. There is no approved human vaccine. The disease is rare in humans. The annual count of confirmed U.S. cases typically reaches the low double digits in active years, and that rarity is the only real counterweight. The bridge vectors that transmit to humans are active at dusk and dawn in the habitats where EEE circulates. A mosquito bite in those conditions, in those environments, from one of those species is indistinguishable from any other. No pain distinguishes it. No visible consequence begins for days. The ranking at 3 reflects the combination of severity and the absence of any signal at the moment of exposure. The probability is low. The consequence, when the chain completes, is catastrophic and irreversible. The mosquito does not look different from any other mosquito. The bite does not feel different. The outcome diverges weeks later. At 2, something that does not kill you and is arguably worse for that reason. The Lone Star tick, Amblyomma americanum, is one of the most aggressive host-seeking ticks in the eastern United States. All 3 life stages seek mammalian hosts, which is unusual among ticks. Both nymph and adult females are capable of transmitting pathogens. The species has expanded substantially through the Appalachian region, documented through CDC surveillance and state vector-borne disease programs with increasing detection in counties throughout the mountain corridor. The mechanism that places it at 2 is alpha-gal syndrome. A protein in Lone Star tick saliva, alpha-gal, introduced into the human bloodstream during a bite, triggers an immune response in some individuals that subsequently produces severe allergic reactions to alpha-gal found in red meat and mammalian products. The reaction is not immediate. It appears 3 to 6 hours after consuming red meat, which makes the connection difficult to identify without medical investigation. In some individuals, the reaction reaches anaphylaxis. The syndrome can persist for years, with some evidence it may diminish over time with no further tick bites, but no treatment reverses it. The Lone Star tick also vectors ehrlichiosis and has been studied for tularemia transmission competence. But alpha-gal syndrome is the reason it sits above the EEE vector on this list. EEE requires a chain of rare events. A Lone Star tick bite, which can occur from a nymph no larger than a small freckle, requires only that the bite occur and that the affected person belong to the fraction that mounts the alpha-gal immune response. No other unusual condition. No infected blood pool. No sequential host. One tick bite changes what you can eat for potentially the rest of your life, with no warning and no preceding symptom. And at number 1, the insect most people watching this video already know about. The black-legged tick, Ixodes scapularis, the deer tick. This is the species most Appalachian hikers have learned to take seriously, and that existing concern is exactly the reason it finishes here. Because the concern is almost entirely focused on one pathogen. Lyme disease caused by Borrelia burgdorferi is the most reported vector-borne disease in the United States, according to CDC surveillance. The black-legged tick is its primary vector in the eastern and upper Midwestern states. Appalachian trails, hardwood forest floors, and shrubby edges are core habitat. Nymph stage ticks, the size of a poppy seed, are responsible for most human transmission because they are nearly impossible to detect during a post-hike check. Here is what the careful hiker who does tick checks may not know. The same tick, the one they are already watching for, also vectors Anaplasma phagocytophilum, which causes anaplasmosis, Babesia microti, a parasitic infection affecting red blood cells, and Powassan virus, a rare but severe neurological disease with no treatment, and a fatality rate that CDC reporting has placed between 10 and 15% in some series, with a significant proportion of survivors developing long-term neurological effects. Lyme disease requires tick attachment of 36 to 48 hours for efficient transmission. Powassan virus does not. Experimental data suggest Powassan can transmit in as little as 15 minutes. Tick checks after a hike, the behavior most carefully instructed hikers perform, provide meaningful protection against Lyme. They provide almost no protection against Powassan. The black-legged tick sits at 1, not because it is the most dramatic insect on this list, not because every encounter leads to serious illness. The vast majority of bites transmit nothing at all, but because the precautions most people in these mountains have already adopted are calibrated to one of 4 pathogens it carries. The tick check that takes 15 minutes to complete protects against the disease that needs 36 to 48 hours. And the one that doesn't is already gone. What connects the 15 species on this list is not that the Appalachians are unusually dangerous. They are not. It is that the gap between a familiar belief and an accurate one is, in most of these cases, very small. A tick is too large to miss. The insect that looks enormous is harmless. This mountain has no fire ants. The caterpillar that looks soft cannot hurt you. Checking for ticks covers it. Some of these exposures are genuinely rare. Most bites and stings on this list result in nothing worse than pain and inconvenience. The probability of any single encounter producing a serious outcome is low across almost every entry. That is true, and it matters. What also matters is that several of the conditions separating the ordinary outcome from the serious one are not unusual at all. They are a tick small enough to miss, a caterpillar that looks like foliage, a mosquito at dusk near standing water, a nest that was invisible until September. The trail you walked before watching this has not changed. The brush at waist height is the same. The firewood stacked by the cabin door is the same. The window screen separating the room from the dark outside is exactly where it was.